it was completely different.
Like a whole story.
The whole story.
Um,
And they wore white gloves and hats, and you wouldn't think of going out without a stockings. Never.
Now I think you mentioned your husband was in the military?
He was in the Army.
In the Army?
He went in the Army when he was 18.
Okay. So was this before y'all met? He finished his service before y'all?
Oh, yeah. We didn't meet till 1950.
Okay.
And he went to the service in 43.
Okay.
hmm
And so he was in...
He was in the Army. He went to England, and then he went to France, and he was in the Battle of the Bulge.
He was?
hmm
And I'm assuming he fared fine.
He did.
Came home.
He came home. He drove a tank. He was in the. They demolished the Germans' oil supply.
Oh, good. Uh-huh.
That was the Bulge. I mean, that's what they were supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And he was going to be sent to the Pacific after VE Day. But then he wasn't. He stayed in Paris for another year or so working in the finance department. And I have a picture of him leaning out the window with the orchard tree off in the back of him. And he's leaning out his office window. And when we went to France, one time he showed me where his office was.
Nice.
He remembered.
That's nice.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, so y'all were saying your husband was best man in Miss Kathy Indess' parents' wedding.
That's right.
So how did they meet?
Well, that's where you see Kathy's mother is from. Is from there.
Oh, right.
And they met when she was in Paris with her her nanny, I guess. It was
her governess.
Her governess, exactly. And they met together, and they ran around with each other because Jean and Vernon were very good friends. I mean, in being from here, and they took their R&R together in Zermatt, Switzerland. We had pictures of them on skis, and they after the war, I mean, they kind of relaxed, but it was tough.
Yeah.
And you see, Jean had relatives that lived in France, and they still live in France, and he connected with them. And there was a couple, Maurice and Lynn Tante, and they had a couple of children, and she was pregnant. Lynn was pregnant for for this child when the liberation took place. So they named her daughter Marie-France. And Marie-France visits here all the time with us, she and her husband, and we were there a couple of years ago with them. But we made several trips to visit with them.
So how long was he in the service?
I guess 3 years. Yeah.
And that was all before you knew him?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember that time being here and the war going on? How did that affect you? Or did it really?
Well, I remember doing homework on the Sunday night, December the 7th. And I was at the dining room table at my mama's, and they had the radio on, but Daddy kept saying Pearl Harbor was bombed. Pearl Harbor was bombed, and they were all concerned about it. I said, well, where is Pearl Harbor? I had never heard of Pearl Harbor. So then, of course, that's when all the excitement, and the next day, Roosevelt was speaking on the radio, and everybody that had a radio had the loudspeakers on the street. You could hear it walking down the street. But the war affected us in the sense that we had so many things rationed.
Yes.
And of course we did at school. We knitted for the British, and I learned how to knit, and because that Irish nun, we were going to send things over there. Don't worry about that. And but we knitted for the British. And the Red Cross had ladies rolling bandages, and everybody just got into it, and we made do with what we had. And even owning the grocery store, we couldn't use our coupons, our ration coupons, because I mean, my daddy had to account for everything that was taken out the store with the IPA, the yeah, it's the OPA, the operational. Well, anyway, that I don't remember.
Like an audit board kind of.
Huh?
Someone is accounting for
Oh yes,
the inventory.
absolutely.
Okay.
You see, my mother-in-law. Okay, my husband finished high school in '43.
Mm-hmm.
He went into the service in '43.
Mm-hmm.
Let that ring up, kid. And her husband had died. Mr. Patout had died in '42.
Mm-hmm.
My husband was just going in to be a senior, and he had been the manager of the hotel. So when after he died, she had to leave home and go to the hotel and run the hotel. She had been home. She had 8 children, and that's all she had done was to see. And but she had a lot of help, good help. She had living help,
Yeah.
and she had to go and that was at the time when they couldn't buy sheets. They couldn't get she couldn't get anything for the dining room.
Because of the war.
Yeah, because of the war, and she struggled. I mean, she tried to do the best she could, and she and Miss Clara Roy, who ran the wholesale, where the Boulogne Square is.
Uh-huh.
Well, Miss Roy was working at the wholesale. They owned the wholesale, and she would send Miss Yvonne things that she thought she needed for the restaurant. Well, the government got on those 2 ladies, and they were almost put in jail. They said, you have to stop doing this. They said, well, why? It belongs to us. They said, no, it doesn't. You have to. You can't just do that. It was sugar and oil and things like that that were rationed, because the sugar was rationed, the oil was rationed, the meat. We bought shoes, sandals for $1.98 and hoped they would last a month, because they were all made out of cardboard.
Ah.
You could buy those without a stamp. Otherwise, you had to have a stamp to buy shoes.
That was their way of rationing things.
Yes.
With the stamps.
Uh-huh. You had food stamps, you had shoe stamps, you had gasoline stamps.
I heard that.
Uh-huh. And your car, it depends what you used your car for. A, B, or C. The A was for pleasure, B was if you had to drive to work, and C was a commercial. Like the doctors. The doctors, they had to have a C stamp, and they could get more gas, you see. But if you just used your car, and we were without a car at the end of the war, because our car that Daddy had conked out, and we couldn't get it fixed. So we had to do without an automobile until they started making the cars after the war, and he had his name on a list at one of the dealerships in Jeanneret to get a car as soon as he could get one.
So what happened with his gasoline rations if his car was inoperable? Did they still give him the rations and y'all could?
No, maybe he might have had to give them in. You had to, if your car didn't work and you can't take your license off, I really don't know.
I wonder if he could have traded his gasoline rations for sugar, or whatever, you know, if there was any of that going on.
Oh, there was a lot of that going on. There was a lot of, people trade off. Black market too.
Yeah.
The black market was in, but it never affected. But we survived, we survived. We weren't as bad off as those people in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And we kept telling ourselves that. We lived in the land of freedom.
So you didn't lose any family members over there?
No.
Anyone that you knew?
No. I lost some good friends from Jeanneret. There was several other boys that got killed. There were two cousins that were killed, the same age, and they were Navy pilots, and one of the ladies, one of the insurance agencies we bought was Mr. Clarence Louviere, and they lived on St. Peter Street, and their son was killed at Iwo Jima. Then next door to him was Dr. Shaw, his son was killed. So those two next door neighbors, you know.
Yes.
But no, fortunately, and you see, Gene had 5 brothers. They were all in the service, and they were in different branches of the service. And half the time, his mother didn't even know where they were, but they all came back. Mm-hmm.
That's a huge blessing.
Yes, I mean to have 5 sons in the service, and they were all overseas. I guess you live through it.
Yeah.
But you have to, you know. And she was running the hotel. She was a wonderful person.
She was probably happy to be busy with that hotel.
Yes, she was. Yes, she was. But she did a lot of charity work. She did a lot of church work. She was always something for her children, you know.
So tell me about your fortnightly.
What about it?
Fortnightly 4, right? Do y'all still meet at all?
I'm not in it anymore. I quit a long time ago. When I was working, when I went to work, I stayed in it for a few years. Then it just got too hard for me to leave.
To go.
And but although it's still in existence, there's still some charter members. It was formed in 1950. That one was, and there's still some of the same ones in there.
We're in fortnightly 11.
11.
Yeah, we love it.
No, we had fun. What we did was we gave parties all the time. We were always giving parties.
Less book reading back then.
With
and
our
more
husbands.
drinking.
Yeah, we always wanted to entertain our husbands. We would have dances at the Veterans Building. And every year we would have a big dance. And we would invite a couple, you know, so that made 40 couples. And Gene and Gerald was always doing the food.
Oh, yeah.
But we would, one time we had a big discussion at a meeting. At one of the meetings, they were deciding what they wanted to eat, and a big fight over what brand of mayonnaise they wanted.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So I said, well, now this is ridiculous.
So you made your homemade mayonnaise?
No, oh no. So somebody said, let the entertainment committee handle this and don't bring this up at the meetings. And everybody said, yay.
Over mayonnaise.
No, we had a good time. My mother-in-law was one of the first original members of the Fortnightly. She and Miss Roberta Voorhees, Miss Bessie Kyle, Mrs. Courts, Henrietta Courts, Celeste Burke, Miss Lillian Barra. All those were some of the original ones in 1925.
Is your mother-in-law, so you're saying she was in Fortnightly 1?
Yes.
Is that the same Patout that's Kelly Patout Romero?
Yeah.
Musson Patout? Okay, she's in our Fortnightly.
Yeah. Well, Kelly's daddy was my nephew-in-law.
Okay.
My husband's nephew.
Okay. So
Jeff.
all these connections in this small town.
Yeah. All the Patouts are related.
Okay.
They're all related. I mean, the Patoutville and all that, because they came from 2 Patouts that came from France in 1825, Apolline and Simeon. And from them came all this other. You see, like my husband's family, there were 7 boys.
Yeah.
And just
So
one
that-
girl.
Yeah.
And then the other Patouts at Patoutville, they had a lot of girls too. Apolline had 7 girls and just 2 boys. And her husband died before his first cane crop came in, and she had to run the plantation. And she said, "Dear God, why did you send me 7 boys and two girls?" But she had those 2 boys, and Felix Patout, my husband's grandfather, was one of them, and Hippolyte the first was the other one.
Now, where do you come from? You Johnsons. Where do you?
Of Oz Parish.
No, I mean your. Did your family come from French Canadian?
Okay. Charles Johnson, that's my patron in the DAR. He came with the Acadians, and he was given a land grant in of Oz Parish.
Oh, okay.
and his son married Marie Brasso, who came with her mother and 5 sisters, and their father had died. So, and I understand, I just found this out not too long ago, that Marie Brasso's mother was a girlfriend of Beausoleil. Beausoleil, from what I understand, was a rounder. That he had a wife, but he had a lot of girlfriends.
Scoundrel, I would say. Yeah. Well, that's funny. All right. Is there anything you would like to add? Anything interesting you think that?
Well, I don't know. Is anything?
Not that, I mean, I feel like all of it has been interesting.
I think your questions are very good.
Thank you.
You did a good job of that, because I think you covered a lot. Now, I don't know what the other people are telling you, or what
They all kind of go in there.
we
We start with, we had some suggestions and we kind of go from there. So.
but
I
you,
have a question.
uh-huh.
Why wasn't your husband in the sugar industry?
In what?
Why,
sugar.
his family was so, involved in the sugarcane industry.
Oh, Felix Patout sold all of his interest out.
Oh, okay.
Of the after the Civil War.
That was his grandfather.
Yes, his
Okay.
grandfather. After the Civil War, they almost went bankrupt out there, because there was
It was
just
a hard times,
yes, they had nothing. They had nothing, and that's when Marianne Patout, her husband was Hippolyte the first, but she was a Schwing. That's and that's how that's connected. And then Patout married a Schwing after that. So it's complicated. but when Hippolyte died, this is Marianne's husband, she asked Felix if he wanted to buy her share out. And he thought she was going to Texas. Everybody, I don't know why, everybody wanted to go to Texas. Because Texas, there was no war going on in Texas. And a lot of people went to Texas during the Civil War to escape going to fight. And, or they went for protection because there was no war going on. And so Felix told her no, that he didn't want to buy her out, and he says just leave it like it is, and I'll run it for you. And she says, oh no, I want to buy you out. So he says okay. Now, from what we gather in the family, Felix didn't like the country too much. He went to Georgetown in Washington D.C. He was always on the ocean going to France because he had 2 wives and they both came from France.
Oh.
His first wife was Adele, and she came to the United States, didn't have any children, and when they went back to France to visit her family, these are the same people Jean met during the ancestors. She died. So he came back to the United States. Then he went back and he married her sister. And they lived in the house on Main Street, the Broussard Patout house. That it's on the left.
Shadows.
The Shadows. Then the Weekes' house,
and
and then the Broussard house, and then the Patout house.
Okay.
You see, Terry Broussard. That's Tommy Broussard's mom. Well, there's the Shadows, the Weeks house, the Broussard house, and then the Patout house. But the Patout house and the Broussard house had a connection because Mr. Felix lived here, and his sister Flora, who married a Schwing, lived next door to him, and that Schwing died very young.
But there's a Schwing in the Broussard house, right? Now?
Yes, Terry. She was a Schwing, and she married her cousin.
Okay.
There's a lot of intermarriage because my sister-in-law Teresa Patout was a Patout from Lydia.
Well, there were so
They wanted to
many
keep
of them, I guess. And
they
they were in a
wanted to
small
keep the
town.
money in the family.
Elmira Brennan, the clerk
Yes.
for the mayor.
Elmira?
Yeah,
Yes.
she was a Patout, and and her daddy was a Patout. Her mama was a Patout.
Her mama and her dad were Patouts.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it, they wanted to keep the money in the family.
Well,
so if they married
I
out,
didn't get
Yeah,
in
they're-
them.
Grandfather sold.
Now you know the house where your in-laws live, the Dewey house over
yes.
there. Well, Mrs. Dewey was my mother-in-law's sister.
Oh,
Retired.
okay.
Yeah. Bull Dewey
Yes.
is a cousin. His dad is my husband's first cousin.
Wow.
So,
So you
there's-
have plenty of relations.
you don't talk about anybody in your Iberia because you're gonna sure the hell talk about to a relative. I did it. I did it.
Been there, done that, huh?
That's right. So, no, but I've had a very good life. I say that we've all had our ups and downs. We've all had our ways of surviving and hoping for the best for our neighbors and our friends and our family. But I have always prayed very hard for everybody. And I love everybody.
Yeah.
I like people. I love my family. And I think my family loves me.
Oh, they do.
I think so.
They
Yeah.
good to me. They always concerned about me. One of them calls every morning to see if I'm all right. So
Good. Well, I think that's a good note to end on then.
Yes. Thank you.
thank you.
you.